Let your eyes grow heavy as we drift away from the present. The air is still warm from the day, but night has brought a quiet hush. Your pillow might be soft, your room dim, but imagine yourself elsewhere, gently held in the dust-colored hills of a forgotten land. We travel now, far back through time, to the edge of the ancient Egyptian desert. The sun has not yet risen, but the world is beginning to shift. We are in Thebes, or what will one day be known by that name. Thebes in the age of pharaohs. But we are not entering the palaces, nor walking beneath the gold-leafed arches of temples. Instead, we walk among those who carved the afterlife with their hands. The village is small and hidden, walled off from the world like a precious thought. It is called Set Mat, the place of truth. You might know it by another name, Deir el-Medina. Here, artisans and their families live, tucked against the western hills beyond the Nile. Their work is sacred and secret, to build tombs for kings. The men chisel gods into limestone, whispering to the silence, while their wives grind flour in shaded courtyards and patch linen with fingers worn by years. The children play in dust that carries the memory of generations. It is quiet now. Only the distant cry of a jackal breaks the dawn. The sky, not yet fully awake, glows with a faded violet. Shadows stretch long and blue across the uneven stone path that winds through the village. A soft wind rolls down from the cliffs, warm already, scented faintly of the dry herbs that cling to the rocks. In one of the houses, a low, square place of mud brick, its roof flat and scattered with jars of drying fruit, a man stirs beneath his linen blanket. His name might have been Pehemnitger, or Nebnefer, or Sennacherib. Names passed down and dug up, written in the dust of history. His waking is slow, practiced, calm. He does not startle. He listens first. The quiet crackle of a hearth gone cold. The rustle of linen nearby. His wife rising to press her palms into dough left to rise through the night. In the next room, a child coughs once in his sleep, then settles again. Outside, a donkey brays lazily. Somewhere a copper pot is bumped against a stone surface, the sound soft and hollow like an old drum. The artisan stretches. His muscles, long trained to crouch in tunnels and hold chisels steady for hours, wake with some reluctance. There is no rush. Not yet. The sun hasn't shown its face, and the overseers will not come until the morning shadows shorten. He sits upright on the edge of the sleeping mat, feet brushing against the cool floor. He pulls on his linen kilt and rises, walking barefoot into the open-air courtyard where a small oven smolders with the last embers of last night's fire. His wife, careful, focused, lifts a flat loaf from the heat-stained stone surface. The smell is comforting. Barley, slightly burnt at the edges, mixed with the lingering perfume of wood smoke. They do not speak at first. Words are not needed. The ritual of mourning has spoken for them thousands of times. He accepts a bowl of water from her, rinses his hands slowly, then his face. The water is slightly warm, likely left in a clay pot beside the hearth overnight. He drinks the last mouthful from his fingers. A rooster, brought in from the market a few months ago, lets out a reluctant, warbling crow. From neighboring rooftops come more signs of life. Someone dragging a clay pot across the plastered roof, a baby crying briefly, then soothed. A woman sweeping the courtyard sand, her broom made of bound palm fronds. The rhythm is slow, steady, eternal. The artisan steps into the street, if one could call it that. It is narrow, walled in by homes, and shaded in patches by the thick awnings villagers have stretched between rooftops. The limestone of the path is uneven beneath his feet, worn by centuries of passage. He walks past low walls where fig trees lean lazily over the edge, their leaves still tucked in dew. At the village gate, little more than a low barrier of brick with 2 wooden beams for reinforcement. He pauses. A boy no older than 10 is already there, leaning against the sun-warmed stone, watching for the first flicker of light over the hills. He glances at the artisan and nods. The man nods back. No one speaks loudly this early. The village exists in a hush, as though afraid to disturb the dreams left over from the night. And just beyond the gate, far to the east, The sky blooms orange at the edges. The sun, cautious at first, begins its slow rise. Its light brushes the tops of the hills, painting the limestone cliffs in amber and gold. The cliffs are old, carved by time and wind, and now, by the hands of men like him. The tomb lies in those hills, the sacred project. The long descent into the earth where a king will sleep forever, his walls painted with promises and gods, his name protected by spell and stone. But before that journey begins, there is a stop to make. The well. The artisan turns from the gate, walking the other direction now, past sleepy neighbors and shuttered windows. His feet know the way. The path winds down past the granary, still locked, past the scribe's house, where light flickers faintly behind a curtain. Early as always, the scribe already at his scrolls. You might picture this walk, the dusty morning air, the soft grind of sandals on limestone, the clinking of an empty jar against his hip, the way the world feels balanced. Not quiet like emptiness, but quiet like peace. And ahead, at the edge of the village, lies the stone well. Tomorrow he will draw water again, and the next day and the day after. But for now, as the sun climbs and the shadows retreat, the rhythm of his day is just beginning, and the tomb is waiting. The well is shallow by desert standards, but deep enough to catch the slow trickle of water that runs beneath these sun-beaten hills. It has been here longer than any one villager can remember, carved wide and round, with smooth, polished stone around its lip from generations of palms resting there. The pulley creaks as another artisan lowers a rope, thick and scratchy from age, wound around a loop of shaped wood that turns with effort. It descends with a sigh, the clay jar tied to its end vanishing into the cool darkness. The artisan waits his turn. He stands beside a row of other men, many of them still quiet, most still half asleep. Some hold jars. Others lean against the surrounding wall with folded arms. A few speak, but only in low tones, respectful of the hour, of the place, of the rhythm that binds them together. They are workers of the tomb, yes, but also neighbors, fathers, brothers, friends. He nods to one man, older and graying, who wears a kilt stained with ochre. Painter. The older man returns the nod and hands over a small scrap of linen, folded carefully around a bit of dried fig and crushed sesame. A quiet gift for the day ahead. The artisan tucks it into the sash around his waist and offers a few words of thanks. His turn arrives. He steps forward and gently lowers his own jar down into the cool shaft. The rope unwinds slowly, and the jar lands with a soft splash, barely audible. He draws it back up, steady, even the weight increasing as the water climbs. The pulley groans, but does not resist. He draws until the jar reappears, its sides already beaded with moisture. He pours a little into a leather waterskin, the rest into a wide-mouthed vessel to carry back home. It's enough for his wife and children to cook, to wash, to drink. Not much, but always enough. The sun has now cleared the ridge, casting long, angled light across the village rooftops. Chickens peck at the sand, scratching for seeds. A few young boys dart between homes, chasing a palm fiber ball. Laughter echoes faintly, like a distant bird call, but quickly dies down as the women step outside with baskets of dough and scraps for the hearths. The morning is in full motion now. He returns the full jar home, passing by the scribe's doorway once more. The door is slightly ajar, and the scent of warm ink drifts out. A sharp, slightly bitter aroma that clings to the fingers and marks the skin with little black spots. The artisan pauses. Inside, the scribe sits cross-legged on a mat of woven reeds, his head bent low over a papyrus scroll. His lips move as he recites lines from a funerary prayer, his voice almost inaudible. On a nearby ledge sits a small carved wooden box, plain but carefully maintained. It holds the writing tools of his trade, thin reed pens with shaved tips, a small bowl of water for softening dried ink cakes, 2 stones, one black, one red, used to grind pigment into words. The artisan watches for a moment, respectful. Scribes are rare and valued, not just for their knowledge, but for their silence. They keep the records, They know which man carved what chamber, which day a sarcophagus was lowered into place, which worker fell ill and needed to rest. Their ink holds memory, not just of kings and gods, but of common men. The artisan moves on. Back at his house, his wife is feeding the fire. The courtyard glows now in full sun, and the scent of flatbread mixes with the faint tang of crushed herbs. The children are awake. A boy of 7, crouched with a handful of pebbles, carefully arranging them in patterns on the stone floor. A girl, younger, trailing a ribbon of worn fabric behind her like a pet. He sets down the water, accepts a small cup of beer, weak, made from barley left to ferment just a day or two, and not strong enough to dull the senses. Just enough to quench the throat and calm the belly. His tools are waiting, wrapped in linen, tucked neatly into a reed mat against the far wall. He unties the cloth slowly. Inside, a set of chisels, worn but sharp, a wooden mallet, darkened with age, a stone straightedge used for measuring the symmetry of gods, a bronze blade for finer detail. Each tool is inspected, its edges checked, its weight balanced in the palm. There is no room for haste in this craft. He bundles the tools again, places them in a sling across his back, and rises. It is time. He joins the others at the edge of the village, where a narrow path leads west, away from the Nile, away from the green fields toward the cliffs. The sun is hot already, but the men walk slowly, steadily, in silence. The path twists through dry gullies and crumbled rocks. Occasionally they pass ancient stone markers, some carved, some bare. The wind moves softly here, dragging thin fingers across the cliffs. The valley is ahead, a sacred place, hollowed from stone by the hands of men. A place of kings, of silence, of slow work. As they approach, the entrance to the tomb flickers into view. Little more than a dark mouth in the rock, with scaffolding and baskets piled nearby. The overseer is already there, standing beneath a linen canopy, scratching notes into a tablet with a reed pen. He does not raise his voice, merely gestures. Each man knows where he must go. The artisan steps into the shade at the tomb's mouth. The air is cool, still, almost wet with trapped moisture. A few oil lamps burn within, their flames low and steady, casting flickers along the walls. He breathes once, deeply. The day has begun. The tomb awaits, and as he steps inside, one foot after the other carefully, the light of morning fades behind him. Inside, the only light comes from fire. The lamplight glows against the rough stone walls, each flickering flame dancing in a small clay bowl filled with thick, sticky oil. The wicks are short and quiet. They burn not to light the world, but just enough to keep it visible. The air smells faintly of smoke and crushed limestone. Not unpleasant, but thick enough to sit in the nose and throat like a memory. The artisan walks deeper into the tomb shaft. His eyes, long trained to this dimness, adjust with ease. Around him, other workers move in a slow, practiced rhythm, each one with a task, each one a part of something far older than any of them alone. The passage narrows, then opens into a chamber, walls half smooth, half etched, waiting for the next layer of meaning. He unpacks his tools quietly, laying them on a flat slab of limestone along the wall. Beside him, a pigment grinder crushes blue stones into powder, using a small mortar carved from basalt. The sound is steady, rhythmic, a soft crunch, scrape, crunch. From time to time, he adds a drop of water and continues. The resulting paste will become color, and color will become gods. The artisan selects his chisel and mallet. He kneels. Before him is a sketched outline in red ochre, lines drawn by a master, refined with years of experience. A figure of Anubis, jackal-headed, arms crossed. Behind him, a sacred scribe, kneeling, pen poised over a scroll. These sketches are faint, ghostly, and they guide the hand, but the chisel makes them real. Top, top, top. The sound is soft, controlled, never rushed. The artisan follows the lines with care, letting the rhythm guide his breath. The dust rises in tiny clouds and settles on his bare arms, sticking to the sheen of sweat. He pauses every few strokes to brush the wall clean with a stiff reed brush. The sun outside grows hotter, but here, in the belly of the tomb, the world does not change. It remains still, suspended in this moment, in this purpose. At intervals, an overseer passes through, his sandals scuffing lightly across the floor. He examines the progress, nods without comment, and moves on. The workers do not speak. Words are saved for breaks, for home, for other places. Here, only the tomb speaks, in dust and symbols and the hush of stone being shaped. On the far side of the chamber, 2 apprentices mix pigment in a broad, shallow basin. Crushed malachite for green, lapis for deep blue, red from iron oxide, and yellow from orpiment. The colors are bright in the dimness, glowing like small treasures. A painter nearby dips his brush, made from bundled palm fibers, into a bowl of softened ochre, and begins to trace the painted outlines of a scarab. His hand is steady, his posture serene. Time passes slowly, uncounted. There are no clocks, no bells, no rush. The only signal is the overseer's word when the midday break nears. But before then, the artisan continues his carving. The line of Anubis's arm begins to take shape, shallow at first, then deeper, more defined. Beneath his hands, the chisel sings a steady tune, biting into the stone with quiet purpose. This work is not for beauty alone. It is for memory, for eternity. Every stroke is a prayer. You might imagine the coolness of the rock beneath his palm, the way the edge of the chisel fits into his fingers like an old friend, the silence that feels less like absence and more like a presence, thick and warm and ancient. There is a sense here that time does not pass, settles like dust. Occasionally, someone sneezes, someone coughs, someone hums very softly beneath their breath. All sounds are brief, drifting into the stone and then gone. The artisan reaches a stopping point. He sets the chisel down, brushes the stone clean, and examines the line. Not perfect, but true. He leans back on his heels, stretches his shoulders, and takes a long, slow breath. In the passage outside the chamber, someone walks by carrying a basket of lamp oil. The scent of fresh resin trails behind him. The lamps are trimmed and refreshed one by one. The glow flickers stronger for a moment, then steadies. The artisan wipes his brow and stands. There is another task awaiting him. Across the tomb, a new chamber is being prepared, its walls raw and uneven. The ceiling is low, the air thicker. Here, the sacred geometry is just beginning. He enters, stooping slightly. On one wall, a faint grid has been sketched in red. Squares and lines, invisible to the untrained eye, serve as guides for placing divine scenes with balance and order. Nothing in this tomb is done without measure. The gods do not permit chaos here, only harmony. He kneels again, this time to help mark the space where the sun god Ra will rise in a boat of gold. Another artisan reads softly from a list, the order of symbols, the posture of hands, the number of lotus petals to be shown. The artisan listens, nods, and begins to measure. He draws faint lines with charcoal, then scratches them lightly into the surface with a pointed flint. Each square holds a part of the story, a piece of the journey through the underworld, a step toward eternal peace. The placement matters. Even the smallest mistake could shift meaning. Outside, the sun climbs high. Inside, the light remains steady, filtered through fire and stone. The workers move slowly, deliberately, like monks in a quiet ritual. The tomb is their chapel, their canvas, their meditation. Soon it will be time to rest. But for now, the artisan continues, a line here, a curve there. His fingers move with practiced grace, and the wall accepts his marks with quiet patience. The tomb deepens, the story expands, and in the gentle echo of tapping and scraping, the afterlife begins to take shape. The scent of stone dust lingers in the air like a dry perfume. Every breath the artisan takes carries with it the taste of the tomb, old earth, oil smoke, and the faint mineral sharpness of crushed pigment. His knees ache slightly from kneeling, but he doesn't move yet. He smooths the last line of the day's geometry grid with a dry palm, inspecting the spacing with narrowed eyes. Satisfied, he leans back, brushes off his hands, and finally rises. Behind him, the low flicker of a lamp casts a ripple of light across the stone wall. The carved grid is now complete, a foundation laid not for numbers, but for gods. Soon, figures will be drawn here, sacred animals, radiant beings, floating symbols. The ceiling above has been smoothed but left bare for now. Later, perhaps in a few weeks, it will carry the stars. The artisan leaves the chamber, walking slowly back toward the entry shaft. Along the way, he passes other rooms in varying states of creation. In one, two men carve the feet of a seated deity, their mallets rising and falling in synchronized rhythm. In another, three apprentices mix pigment under the guidance of an older woman. Rare in this place, but she is respected, with a touch that even the foremen do not question. She hums softly as she stirs. A lullaby, perhaps, or a prayer passed down from mothers who also ground stones into dreams. The artisan reaches the surface. Sunlight greets him with a sudden brilliance, and he lifts a hand to shade his eyes. The world outside the tomb is loud with light. Cliffs burning gold in the afternoon glare, air dry enough to crack the lips. The heat presses on his skin like a heavy blanket, but he doesn't flinch. He's known this heat all his life. Around him, the other artisans have emerged as well. A dozen or more men walk down the slope toward a shaded area of woven reed mats and half-walls of stone. This is their midday refuge. Part shelter, part dining space, part gathering place. No tables, no formality, only quiet routine. The artisan joins them, sitting cross-legged in the sand. A young boy, perhaps a son of one of the overseers, walks among the workers, passing out loaves of bread from a wide clay basket. The bread is coarse, dense, warm from the morning ovens. Each man receives one, and a small earthen cup of barley beer to wash it down. The beer is cloudy, soft on the tongue, with just a trace of sourness. Tastes like the Nile in a way, earthy, slow, ancient. He eats slowly, methodically, his fingers brushing crumbs from his lap. Around him, quiet conversation begins. Nothing loud, nothing urgent. Just men talking about the work, about the progress, about a wife's illness or a child's stubbornness. They speak in low tones, pausing often. The air hums with shared labor. One man holds up a small shard of pottery, a bit of broken amphora, smoothed along the edges. He's drawn a crude figure on it with ink, a falcon with outstretched wings. He passes it around. The others smile, murmur comments. The artisan takes his turn, examining it closely. The lines are shaky, but confident. A good omen, perhaps, or a harmless distraction. The shard is passed back. Another man begins to tell a story. Slow, rhythmic, filled with long pauses. It's a familiar tale, one they've all heard before. Something about a farmer who tries to outwit the god Thoth and ends up turned into a beetle. The artisan lets the story wash over him like warm water. He doesn't need to follow every word. The cadence is enough. The voice is slow, even comforting. When the bread is gone and the beer cups are dry, the men begin to rise, one by one. Some stretch their legs, others rest their heads briefly on rolled-up cloaks. The artisan wipes his hands on a scrap of cloth, folds it neatly, and returns it to his pouch. The sun has shifted, casting longer shadows now across the valley walls. It's time to return. The path back to the tomb is the same, winding, uneven, dotted with loose stones and the occasional dusty footprint. But in the heat of the afternoon, it feels quieter. The air is still heavy. Even the birds are silent. Only the sound of sandals brushing the path, tools clinking in their wraps, and the occasional cough breaks the stillness. Back at the tomb entrance, the artisan pauses. He places a palm on the warm stone wall beside the door, a habit more than anything, a kind of greeting, or perhaps a farewell to the sunlight. He steps inside. The chamber is cooler now. The lamps have been refreshed. The apprentices have returned. A new section of wall awaits him, this one not yet shaped, rough to the touch, blank like a page before the first word. He begins again. The rhythm returns. Tap, tap, brush. Tap, tap, brush. Stone dust collects around his knees. The chisel bites, lifts and bites again. The god takes shape beneath his hands, slowly, as if waking from sleep. Hours pass, though they are not counted. Time in the tomb flows differently, thick, slow, like honey or cool oil. At one point, the painter joins him. The artisan shifts aside, giving space. Together, they inspect the wall, discuss the lines, nod, adjust. A slight curve here, a deeper shadow there. Nothing rushed. All is deliberate. All is sacred. By the time the lamps burn lower, the chamber is quiet again. Most of the workers have finished their tasks and begun the slow walk home. The artisan remains for a moment, alone. He runs his hand along the finished carving. A curve of the sun disk, the arm of a god, the petal of a lotus. Smooth, clean, true. Then he gathers his tools, wraps them again, and turns to go. The walk back to the village is slower. The heat has begun to fade, and the wind returns. A soft breeze carrying the scent of distant fields, of evening fires, of life outside the tomb. The artisan breathes deeply. He does not speak. The sun lowers behind the cliffs, casting long shadows across the valley. The stone holds the day's heat, releasing it now in little puffs of warmth beneath his feet. And ahead, the rooftops of the village begin to glow with soft orange light. Hearth fires, lamps, candles in narrow windows. The day's work is done, but life, quiet, slow, familiar, continues. The path back into the village is bathed in the golden hush of early evening. The artisan's sandals press lightly into the dusty road, following tracks made countless times before. Some fresh from today, others softened by wind and memory. The walls of the village rise around him once more, simple and firm, made of sun-dried mud brick that glows warmly in the sinking light. The roofs are flat, layered with reeds and mats, jars stacked carefully along the edges to dry in the breeze. Children's laughter drifts through the alleys now, subdued but bright, little voices weaving in and out of corners as games wind down. A girl races past with a stick and hoop, her bare feet patting softly on the stone. A boy crouches beside a low wall, etching a pattern into the dirt with a pebble. Near a doorway, two older boys fashion tiny chariots from scraps of wood and thread, adjusting the wheels with intense focus. They do not look up as the artisan passes, not out of disrespect, but because this too is part of their daily rhythm. He walks with quiet steps, nodding to a neighbor stacking firewood, greeting an elder seated on a stool with a gentle hand raised in the air. These gestures are small, unspoken, and understood. In a place like this, where lives unfold within walls that hold both labor and rest, there is a kind of peace that comes with repetition. The same path, the same faces, the same sun. The artisan reaches his home. The doorway is open, and the smell of stew drifts into the street. Lentils, garlic, perhaps a bit of dried fish and onions. His wife stands near the hearth, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, turning something over in the pot with a carved wooden spoon. A child leans against her hip, humming tunelessly, half awake with evening weariness. He steps into the courtyard, setting his tool bundle on the low bench beneath the shade of a fig tree. His daughter sees him first and trots over, arms outstretched, her linen tunic slightly askew. He lifts her easily, resting her against his shoulder, and breathes in the warm, dust-sweet scent of her hair. She wraps her small fingers around his neck and does not speak. His wife looks up and smiles, a brief, quiet smile, and nods once before turning back to the pot. He lowers the girl to the ground, where she plops onto the stone floor and begins tracing lines in the dust with one finger. The artisan unwinds the cloth around his tools. He examines each piece, not because he doubts their condition, but because this is what he always does. The chisel is still sharp. The mallet is firm. He wipes them gently with a rag and returns them to their linen wrap, tying it tight. Dinner is served without ceremony. The family gathers on low mats around a tray of food, the stew, a few rough loaves, a dish of dates. The son arrives with a small jug of water, setting it carefully beside the bowl. They eat with their fingers, tearing bread, scooping lentils, chewing slowly. No one speaks much. The sounds of eating are soft and steady. The occasional slurp, the creak of a wooden spoon, the rustle of cloth. Above them, the sky deepens into shades of lavender and pale blue. A few early stars blink quietly above the rooftops. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries, then is hushed. A goat brays. A door shuts with a muffled thump. After the meal, the children curl up in a corner of the room, their limbs draped over woven blankets, eyes fluttering closed. The artisan helps his wife clean the bowls, pouring water from the jug into a wide clay basin, wiping each dish with a scrap of linen and setting them upside down to dry on a flat stone. The tasks are small but familiar, reassuring. Then, as the village falls further into stillness, he slips out once more. Not all evenings end like this, but tonight there is more to do. He walks slowly through the village paths, now dimly lit by flickering lamps tucked into doorways or mounted on stone ledges. The soft orange glow dances along the walls, casting long shadows that seem to sway with the breeze. At the edge of the village, where the homes give way to rockier ground, lies a small granary, a long, low structure made of brick and reinforced with beams. Inside, grains are stored in wide clay bins, sealed with plaster, labeled with painted marks. This is where the gossip lives, they say. Not the loud, cruel kind, but the soft sort. Stories traded in whispers while loaves are weighed, or when a husband buys extra barley with a hint of pride in his voice. Tonight, the granary is mostly quiet. A few workers sit outside, finishing their beer, rubbing their tired feet. A woman leans against a post, peeling a fruit with a small copper knife. The artisan nods as he passes, and someone asks him about the wall he was carving. Not the content, of course, for that is sacred, but about the depth of the groove or how the light played across it. He answers in short phrases, giving only what is needed. From behind the granary, the sound of drums rises. Faint, distant, almost like a heartbeat. The artisan smiles to himself. Someone is singing in the courtyard, an old song, one he remembers from his father's house, a lullaby to the gods of the western hills. He does not linger. As he makes his way home again, the stars have multiplied above. The wind is cooler now, brushing along the rooftops, slipping into the spaces between homes. The village breathes slowly, as though preparing for rest. He steps inside. His wife is already lying on the mat, her breath steady. The children are still tangled together, one foot draped over another's shoulder, a thread of hair across a cheek. The artisan lowers himself to the ground, stretches out, and lets his head rest on his folded cloak. His muscles ache, but gently. His hands still smell faintly of stone and oil. He closes his eyes, and the tomb, silent, waiting, unfinished, settles behind him, like a dream paused until morning. The night passes quietly over the rooftops of Deir el-Medina, the stars slowly wheeling across the sky, casting their faint silver glow over the village below. Occasionally, a dog barks once and falls silent again. Somewhere, a jar rolls gently on a rooftop where it was left to dry. The sound is soft, round, and lonely, the kind of sound that barely wakes a sleeper, then slips away like mist. By dawn, the chill that comes before the sun settles across the stones. It creeps in through doorways and cracks in the walls, curling around bare ankles, nudging sleeping bodies to turn, to stretch, to begin again. The artisan stirs beneath his linen wrap. His back feels stiff from yesterday's carving, a deep, steady ache that tells him the gods are pleased. He breathes in, deeply, feeling the familiar scent of hearth smoke, stone dust, and the faint sweetness of the figs stored in the cool corner of the courtyard. As the first light glows over the eastern cliffs, he rises. This morning begins not with tools, but with thought. A new section of the tomb is to be laid out, a large wall meant for a sacred scene, the weighing of the heart. It must be precise. Every hand gesture, every scale, every symbol aligned just so. The artisan has carved such scenes before, but each tomb is different. Each carries a king's name and with it, a sacred responsibility. He kneels beside a low bench near the door, unrolling a small, worn sheet of papyrus. It is covered in red grid lines, faded sketches, and annotations written in the flowing curves of hieratic script. The scribe had provided it the previous afternoon, after careful measurements. Now it is the artisan's turn to translate those markings onto the stone. He traces the layout with his finger, murmuring to himself, Mot on the left, Thoth with the scroll, Amit near the scale but smaller. His wife, already awake, offers him a small bowl of warm porridge, barley sweetened with date paste and thickened with goat milk. He eats without hurry, his thoughts still circling the grid, the balance of forms, the sacred symmetry. Outside, the village is waking again. Baskets creak as they are lifted onto shoulders. Children splash water onto sleepy faces. A woman laughs gently as she chases a chicken from her cooking hearth. A small boy draws spirals in the dust with a stick, his tongue poking out the side of his mouth in concentration. The artisan gathers his tools, wraps them tightly, and sets off. His walk is quiet, familiar, every stone in the path known to his feet. He passes the granary, the well, the scribe's house. This time, the door is wide open, and the scribe stands outside, holding a scroll in one hand, squinting at the sun with a thin reed pen tucked behind his ear. He nods solemnly to the artisan, and the artisan nods back. As he approaches the cliffs once more, the rising sun throws golden light across the rock faces, making the tomb entrances glow like hidden treasures. The air is dry, but soft. Already, others have gathered at the entrance, some sipping water, others checking their tools. No one speaks loudly. There is a kind of reverence here, not only for the work, but for the space itself. The artisan enters the tomb again. Inside, it is cool, as always. The lamps have been lit anew, casting their gentle halos against the freshly smoothed walls. The scent of heated oil mixes with the mineral sharpness of stone and the faint trace of old incense from a ritual performed weeks ago, still lingering like a memory too stubborn to leave. He walks to the new wall. It is bare, pale, freshly leveled by a team of plasterers who had spent the previous 3 days scraping and polishing. A fine dust still clings to the surface, caught in the tiny grooves. The artisan brushes it away with a palm. The wall is ready. From his pouch, he removes a stick of red ochre, soft, powdery, and bright. He begins by drawing the border, using his straightedge to keep the line even. Then, he marks the midline, the horizontal axis, and begins building the sacred grid, square by square, gently tapping guide points into the plaster with a pointed flint. This process takes time, hours sometimes. He does not rush. Each measurement must be perfect, not only for visual balance but for spiritual truth. The weighing of the heart is not a mere picture. It is the record of judgment. The king, standing before Osiris, must appear calm, upright, dignified. His heart, placed on the scale beside the feather of Mot, must be level. Every detail has meaning. Every god, every scribe, every jackal-headed priest matters. He steps back to review the initial layout. The scale looks balanced. Anubis, the guide of souls, will stand to the side. Thoth will record. Amit, the devourer of the unworthy, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile, will crouch beside the scale, small but ready. And above it all, Osiris will preside, enthroned, eternal. He marks each figure's place in faint lines. The tomb painter will follow these guides later, breathing color into the outlines. But first, the stone must be shaped. With his tools now arranged beside him, chisel, mallet, small blade for detail, the artisan begins.
Top, top, brush. Top, top, brush.
The sound becomes a rhythm, almost a song. Each stroke a heartbeat. Each breath an echo of the wall's slow transformation. The dust rises gently in the lamplight, settling on his skin like ash. Beside him, another artisan carves the columns of hieroglyphs that will describe the king's virtues, his piety, his justice, his victories. The words flow downward like water, each symbol carefully chosen, each line precisely spaced. The two men work in quiet harmony, their movements steady, their eyes focused. Occasionally, one will pause to wipe his brow or sip from a water skin, but otherwise they do not speak. There is a peace in this silence, a shared understanding that words are not needed here. Time softens. Eventually, the overseer appears at the entrance, a short man with a scroll tucked under his arm and a sharp gaze that misses nothing. He inspects the wall, the lines, the grid. He traces the border with a finger, squints at the outline of Thoth's headdress, and gives a short nod. Approval. The artisan exhales, not relief exactly, but a quiet satisfaction. He returns to his work, refining the curve of the scale, adjusting the feather, smoothing the arch of the throne. The chamber around them remains calm. The lamps flicker. The air grows warmer, heavier. But the artisan continues, carving the path of the king's soul into stone. Outside, the sun moves overhead. In here, only the gods move. And slowly, steadily, eternity takes shape beneath his hands. The artisan rests his hand for a moment, the chisel still nestled between his fingers. His muscles are tight from the hours of work, the slow, repetitive motion that shapes not only stone but the day itself. He presses his thumb to the arch of his palm, gently easing the stiffness away, then looks up at the wall before him, a quiet inspection of his morning's labor. The feather of Mot now arcs cleanly toward the scale, its carved edge delicate yet firm. The figure of Anubis stands beside it, his jackal face poised in eternal attention. The balance bar is centered, and the faint lines of the king's profile are beginning to take shape, noble, serene, with the faintest curve to the lips, as if even judgment might come with mercy. From across the chamber, another sound joins the hush, the soft scratch of reed pen on plaster. The scribe has entered, crouched in a shadowed corner with a board on his lap, copying the details of the new grid into his log. Every line drawn on this wall has a corresponding mark on the scroll, a twin etched in ink that will remain long after the artisan is gone. There is a comfort in that, to know that someone records the work, the progress, the thought. Even the quiet mistakes, the corrections, the small shifts in alignment are all noted. Not to shame, but to remember. The artisan returns to his carving. This time he works at the king's sandals, small, curved lines that ground the figure. He moves slowly, using a finer chisel and lighter pressure. Each stroke is careful, deliberate, infused with the respect owed to a man who will live in these images long after his body has turned to dust. Hours pass in the tomb without anyone speaking them aloud. Time is marked only by breath, by the slow dwindling of oil in the lamps, by the way the shadows deepen across the floor. Eventually, the overseer reappears, signaling that it is time to break. Not with a shout or command, but with a subtle movement. A hand raised, a glance passed between the men. The artisan sets his chisel down, brushes the dust from his lap, and stretches his back until his spine gives a quiet pop. Outside, the heat has begun to wane. The sun leans westward, and the cliffs cast longer shadows over the valley. The artisan walks toward the slope where the others have gathered, where mats are unrolled and the remnants of midday meals wait to be shared. He accepts a fig from a passing hand, its skin wrinkled and warm. He eats it slowly, the seeds crunching between his teeth, the sweetness sticking to the back of his throat. Another man passes him a cup of beer, thinner this time, more like water with a tang. He drinks and nods his thanks. There is talk now, but it is quiet, intimate, of the day's work, of an unusual snake spotted near the quarry path, of a rumor that the next tomb may be for a royal wife, which means new designs, new rules, new stories to carve. The artisan listens more than he speaks. His thoughts are still wrapped around the lines on the wall, the balance of the figures, the tiny adjustment he must make to the hand of the god Thoth in the morning. It is always like this, the mind lingering behind, even as the body steps away. He watches the younger workers play a throwing game, tossing flat stones toward a mark in the dust. They laugh, call out minor boasts and light-hearted jabs. Their energy rises, flares, then fades again, like embers flaring in a breeze. Later, as the sun dips closer to the ridge, the artisan rises. He walks not back to the tomb this time, but to a nearby alcove, a small side chamber dug into the slope, long ago abandoned as a burial space and now used for preparation. Inside, jars of pigment are stored on wide shelves, sealed with wax and marked with symbols to show color and purity. Bundles of brushes are laid out on linen cloth, their ends fanned to dry. The air smells of stone, yes, but also of crushed lapis and ground chalk, of cedar resin and faint ash. The painter is here, not the apprentice, but the master, a man with hands as steady as any scribe's, and eyes that see not just color, but meaning in shade and curve. He is bent over a slab, mixing a new batch of black ink. Not soot, but ground malachite, darkened with iron filings, stirred into water with slow strokes. The artisan waits. When the painter looks up, they exchange nods. They speak of the wall, the lines, the placement of Osiris. The painter runs a finger along the sketch, points out a curve that might be better with more space. The artisan agrees. They adjust the grid slightly, adding a new mark, shifting a guideline no more than a finger's width. It is enough. As they finish, the lamps are lit again for evening work. A few of the men will continue into the night, especially those preparing pigments, as the cooler air allows them to work longer without the materials drying too fast. But the artisan does not stay late tonight. He returns to the tomb, collects his tools, wraps them in linen once again. The wrapping itself is a ritual now, each fold deliberate, each tie snug. He tucks the bundle beneath his arm and begins the walk home. Outside, the cliffs are purple with shadow, the last sunlight just aglow above the horizon. The wind carries dust and the smell of warm stone. The path is quiet. The world has grown softer, as if the valley itself is preparing to rest. He walks slowly, passing the same stones, the same bends in the trail. At one point he pauses, looks up. The sky is nearly clear, a deepening blue. A single star has appeared. He breathes in, and the dust of the day settles gently around him. Not a burden, but a cloak. A reminder, presence. Ahead, the village waits, and tomorrow the gods will call again. The path into the village is nearly dark now, lit only by the occasional glow of a low oil lamp perched in a doorway or on a windowsill. The artisan walks its familiar bends with the quiet ease of someone whose feet know every slope and stone. His body moves without urgency, his pace relaxed and even. With each step, the weight of the day grows softer, not vanishing, but settling, like sand finding rest in the curve of a jar. As he nears his home, the sounds of the village shift. Daytime clatter has given way to night voices, low, murmured tones that drift between walls and over rooftops. A baby whimpers once, then quiets. Somewhere, a flute plays, gently, unskilled but sweet, its notes rising and falling like distant birdsong. There is no rush, no command in these sounds. Only the comfort of repetition, of endings repeating themselves with softness. The artisan steps into his courtyard. His wife is waiting, seated on a mat near the hearth, where a low fire flickers behind a cracked brick wall. She is grinding something in a small stone bowl, perhaps dried herbs or crushed lentils for tomorrow's bread. Her hands move slowly, evenly, with the same careful attention he gives to stone. She looks up and smiles. Not broadly, not expectantly, just enough to say, "I see you. I know today has passed as it always has." He sets his tools on the bench near the wall, unwrapping them slowly. Even now, even at day's end, he checks each one. The mallet's head for splits, the chisels for nicks. He wipes the blades clean with a damp cloth and lays them carefully on a folded piece of linen. They will rest as he will. But not yet. The children are inside already, their small bodies curled under light blankets. A single lamp flickers in the corner, casting long shadows on the wall, the shape of a toy, perhaps, or a sandal left on its side. The boy stirs and turns, sighing softly. The girl murmurs a few sleepy words and presses her cheek into the woven mat. The artisan steps back outside, lowering himself onto the stone ledge near the door. The air is cooler now, brushing against his skin in gentle drafts. He leans his head back against the wall and closes his eyes. For a moment, there is only the sound of the fire crackling softly in the hearth and the wind tracing patterns through the narrow alleys. Then he hears the low rhythm of footsteps, 2 sets, steady and close. He opens his eyes to see 2 neighbors passing by, both carrying bundles, one with firewood, the other with folded cloth. They nod to him and he returns the nod. No words are spoken. None are needed. The village has its own language at night. It is made of glances, gestures, shared silences. The kind of communication that only grows where people live closely, over many seasons, with walls between them so thin that dreams could pass through if they wished. Later, after a cup of warm beer and a handful of dried fruit, the artisan follows his wife inside. They lie on opposite ends of the mat, their feet just touching. He breathes deeply once, then again, and allows the heaviness of sleep to begin its descent. But the morning will come soon, and with it the tomb. And so, when the soft, pale light of the next day seeps into the courtyard, the rhythm begins again. He wakes before the sun fully rises. The air is cool and still. His wife has already stirred, moving softly through the room. The children sleep a little longer today, their faces turned toward the wall, their limbs stretched and relaxed. The artisan dresses, washes his face with water from a shallow bowl, and eats a small piece of bread left from the night before. The flavor is familiar, dry, slightly sour, with a hint of salt. It fills his mouth with the taste of labor. Outside, the village wakes once more. The sound of a broom against stone, the clink of pottery, the low voice of someone greeting a neighbor. These are not loud sounds. They drift like dust, caught in the morning breeze. At the village gate, he meets the painter. They walk together toward the tomb, not in conversation, but in shared silence. Occasionally, one points to something along the path. A strange pattern in the dust, a bird's feather, a bloom of desert grass. Small details, gentle distractions, markers of the slow passing of time. When they reach the tomb entrance, the sun is just beginning to crest the cliffs. Its rays strike the stone above the entrance, warming it to gold. The tomb remains in shadow, cool and quiet, waiting like a deep breath. Inside, the chamber feels familiar, welcoming in its silence. The artisan unwraps his tools, the painter lays out his brushes, and together they inspect the grid once more. Today, color will begin. The painter chooses a soft red ochre to start. Not too bright, not too dull. He mixes the powder with a few drops of water in a small stone bowl, stirring slowly with a reed stick. The pigment thickens into paste. He dips his brush and begins outlining the form of Anubis, carefully, precisely, letting the red follow the carved grooves with almost reverent care. The artisan watches. It is one thing to shape the god from stone, another to see him come alive in color. The red breathes warmth into the wall. It glows, even in the lamplit dimness. The god no longer sleeps in the stone. He watches now. The painter continues, slowly, methodically. Each line is careful, shaped by years of practice. The artisan assists, brushing dust away, smoothing edges, adjusting the light. Around them, the tomb breathes. Elsewhere, other workers prepare new walls, carry tools, whisper instructions. The air is filled with the scent of pigment, oil, sweat, and old stone, all of it wrapped in quiet. As the day unfolds, the wall begins to bloom. The weighing scene fills with shape and hue. Mot's feather in soft white, the scale in balanced black, the throne of Osiris in radiant yellow. The artisan traces each line with his eyes, checking, absorbing, remembering. By midday, the painter rests, wiping his hands on a cloth, sipping from a water skin. The artisan continues his carving. A new section now, the hieroglyphs that will float above the scene. He inscribes them carefully, each symbol a word, a thought, a name. The tomb grows richer with each passing hour. Outside, the sun climbs high. Inside, the gods unfold, one line, one brushstroke, one breath at a time. The artisan steps back from the wall, brushing stone dust from his forearms, his gaze slow and steady. The carving of the hieroglyphs is nearly complete now. Each mark, each symbol etched with care. His chisel rests on the flat slab beside him, still warm from his grip. Across the room, the painter has begun preparing a new batch of blue pigment. The crushed lapis glints faintly in the lamplight, a rare color, deep and regal, reserved for the most sacred of elements. It will be used sparingly, applied only to the garments of the gods, to the feathers of Mot, to the symbols that must carry the greatest meaning. The blue comes from far away, mined in distant mountains, carried across dry lands and traded at high cost. It is precious both in coin and in labor, but it is needed. Some say the gods favor it, that it reminds them of the waters of creation, or of the sky beyond the sky. The artisan kneels once more, adjusting the straight edge to guide the next column of text. His fingers move with confidence born of repetition, but never with arrogance. There is always a sense of reverence, even now, even after so many tombs. Above him, the painter has begun outlining Osiris, the ruler of the afterlife, seated on his throne, a crook and flail crossed upon his chest. The figure is large, dominating the upper register of the wall. His skin will be painted green, the color of rebirth, and his robes white. Around him, other deities will be arranged in harmony, their eyes gently lowered, their hands raised in blessing or in welcome. As the painter works, he hums, a low, unhurried tune, not a melody with sharp turns or loud notes, but more of a breath stretched into sound. It weaves through the chamber like smoke, curling around tools and stone, settling into ears and hearts without disturbing anything. The artisan listens as he carves. The symbols take form beneath his hands, the ankh for life, the jed pillar for stability, the feather for truth. Each is familiar, like a word he has spoken all his life, yet still weighted with purpose. In one corner of the tomb, two apprentices are preparing a base coat for another wall, mixing white pigment with a binder made from plant sap and water. Their movements are quick, eager. One whispers something to the other, who stifles a laugh. The painter glances their way but says nothing. Laughter is not forbidden here, only loudness. The gods may be watching, but they are not without understanding. Later, the overseer enters the chamber, his sandals quiet against the stone. He inspects the scene with a practiced eye, running a hand along the lines, pausing to examine the curve of a feather, the spacing of a glyph. He says little, but his nod of approval is clear. The work is progressing well. The artisan acknowledges him with a slight bow of the head, then turns back to his task. Outside, the sun begins to lower, stretching shadows across the valley. The heat has softened, and a breeze pushes through the tomb entrance, stirring the dust in gentle swirls. The lamp flames flutter slightly, and the scent of resin and warm stone grows richer. The artisan's eyes begin to feel the weight of the day. His shoulders ache from hours of stillness. But he is not ready to stop. He wants to finish this section, a short passage that names the king and offers a prayer for his soul. The words are familiar. May he walk in the field of reeds. May he rise with R.A. May his heart be light. He carves the final lines, straightens, and brushes the stone clean with his hand. The dust falls in a soft puff, revealing the fresh carving beneath. The stone is pale and dry, but the marks gleam slightly in the lamplight, like lines drawn in honey. He steps back and gazes at the wall. From left to right, the entire scene is beginning to cohere. The figures are aligned. The colors, though incomplete, glow with potential. The gods face forward. The king is poised for his judgment. The heart rests on the scale. The feather floats opposite. The outcome is not yet certain, but the path is set. And above it all, the stars will be painted. Not yet, but soon. Small white dots on a deep blue ceiling. A reminder that this tomb, for all its darkness, is a sky unto itself. A place where eternity can be imagined, shaped, and given form. The artisan wipes his hands with a cloth and looks toward the door. The painter is packing away his brushes, carefully wrapping them in strips of linen, soaked with oil to keep the bristles soft. One of the apprentices gathers the pigment bowls, stacking them gently, humming under his breath. There is no formal signal to end the day. Only a feeling, a shift in the air, the settling of tools, the change in light. The artisan wraps his chisels, tying the cloth tight. He stands, stretches, and turns toward the entrance. The walk home is quiet. The path curves gently down the slope, past small outcroppings of rock and patches of scrub. The village glows in the distance, the rooftops tinged with orange as the sun dips low. As he walks, the artisan lets his mind drift. He thinks of the unfinished glyphs, the god's fingers he must refine, the slight error he must correct on the throne's border. But he also thinks of dinner, of warm lentil stew, the sound of his children's laughter, the softness of the mat beneath him as sleep begins to come. He reaches the gate and steps into the familiar maze of walls and courtyards. A neighbor offers him a fig from her basket. He accepts it with a quiet word and a slight bow. It is ripe, its skin cracked slightly from the heat. He bites into it slowly, the sweetness filling his mouth as he walks. Inside his home, the hearth is lit. The courtyard is swept. His children greet him with tired smiles. His wife offers him a bowl and a glance that says the day was long, but not too long. And above, the sky deepens. First indigo, then velvet black, pierced with stars. In the tomb, the gods now wait in half-finished color, their eyes watching, their hands still. But here, in the village, life continues. Slow, gentle, familiar. And tomorrow the stone will call again. Night has fully settled over Deir el Medina now. The sky above is thick with stars, scattered like grains of white barley across a black linen cloth. The village lies in quiet shadow, its doorways drawn shut, its courtyards hushed save for the soft crackle of a dying hearth or the rhythmic sigh of a donkey shifting in its pen. Inside the artisan's home, the light of a small oil lamp flickers gently on the wall. It throws soft amber patterns across the plastered surface, dancing slowly as the flame wavers with the breeze that slips in through a gap near the roof. He sits beside it, legs stretched, back resting against the cool brick. In his lap, a piece of limestone. Not for the tomb, not for the king, but for practice, for thought. The stone is small, smooth on one side. With a reed pen and a shallow bowl of ink, he draws. Not the grand figures of gods and judgment, but simple shapes. A flower, a bird, a line of waves. His wife watches from across the room, her chin resting on her hand. She does not speak, but her eyes follow the movements of his fingers. The children are asleep nearby, curled on their mats, their faces turned toward the wall, the rise and fall of their breaths steady and slow. Sometimes he draws for no reason other than to feel the shape of things again, to let his fingers remember the line of a lotus stem or the curve of a heron's beak. It is a kind of rest different from sleep, a way of quieting the thoughts still echoing from the tomb. After a while, he sets the stone aside and extinguishes the lamp with a careful breath. The room dims, and the hush deepens. He lies down, the mat beneath him warm from the day's heat still lingering in the bricks. Sleep comes slowly but steadily, the kind of sleep that feels heavy but not burdensome, the kind that carries the dust of work in its folds. Morning, as always, returns with a pale blue sky. The sounds of the village unfold again. Sweeping, splashing, the low thud of footsteps on worn stone. But today, before heading to the tomb, the artisan makes a brief stop. Near the edge of the village lives an older man, long retired from the work. His knees no longer bend easily, and his hands tremble if they grip a tool for too long. But he is still respected, his knowledge sought, his memory valued. The artisan carries with him a small shard of limestone, etched with a trial carving. A falcon's wing that does not sit quite right, a tilt in the feathers he cannot seem to correct. He hopes the elder might see what he has missed. He knocks gently and is welcomed in. The house is quiet, cool, filled with the scent of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. The elder squints at the carving, fingers the edge with care, and murmurs a few soft comments. The shoulder is strong, he says, but the tips, they should fall like a reed in water. Let them droop, not rise. The artisan nods, listens. He will remember. After leaving, he heads toward the tomb, walking alone for a while. The sun is higher now, the light strong and clean. A lizard darts across the path, then freezes, its tiny ribs fluttering with breath. At the entrance to the tomb, the painter is already at work, outlining the robe of Osiris in white chalk before the color is added. Today will be a day of detail, refining hands, eyes, feathers, symbols. The artisan steps into the cool chamber, the hush closing around him like a familiar robe. He unwraps his tools and crouches once again before the wall. His fingers press lightly to the stone, feeling its texture, its readiness. Then tap, tap, brush. Each stroke is smaller today, each curve more delicate. He works on the hands of the king, the lines of the staff he holds, the small glyphs that surround the scene with prayers. Time flows slowly again, not marked in hours, but in grooves. Around midday, the scribe enters. He kneels nearby, copying details from the wall onto his scroll. Occasionally, he clears his throat softly or adjusts his ink. He wears a strip of linen wrapped across his forehead to catch the sweat. His presence is steady, a reminder of order. The artisan pauses briefly to sip water, then resumes. The wall begins to hum with completeness, the figures balanced, the spacing even. The story is unfolding, and as he works, he begins to whisper, not loudly, not for others, but for himself. A soft recitation of the lines he's carving, old words, remembered from childhood, passed down by fathers and teachers, and the rhythm of tools. O Osiris, Lord of eternity, grant the breath of life to the justified one. The sound blends with the tapping, the brushing, the scraping, a music not made of instruments, but of repetition and devotion. Outside, the light changes again. Inside, the tomb deepens, not in darkness, but in meaning. Later, when the overseer arrives, he pauses longer than usual at the artisan's section. He traces a line with one finger, inspects the spacing, nods with satisfaction. "Well done," he says, a rare comment, spoken low and calm. The artisan bows his head, not in pride, but in acknowledgement. The work continues. Another figure is outlined. Another glyph is carved. The air is full of soft dust and the scent of pigment and oil. By day's end, the wall looks fuller. The weighing scene nearly complete, the gods in place, the story told in stone. The artisan cleans his tools, wraps them again. His hands are tired, his legs stiff, but the ache is gentle, earned. He steps out into the evening light. The sky is tinged with gold. Birds fly low across the valley, their calls brief and content. The path to the village is quiet, and as he walks, the artisan feels a calm settle over him. Tomorrow there will be more to carve, more to shape, more of eternity to uncover. But for now he walks home, slowly, quietly, with the rhythm of the tomb still echoing in his bones. The walk home is slower this evening. The artisan's feet press softly into the path as the sun begins to sink behind the western cliffs. The light has turned syrupy, thick, amber, stretched long across the valley walls. His shadow trails behind him, long and thin, stretching past the pale stones that mark the edges of the trail. There is no urgency. The day has given what it must. The rest will wait until morning. He passes a group of boys sitting in the dust near the village gate. They're gathered around a flat board etched with lines. A game of senet, played with carved markers and flicked sticks. The boys squint and argue gently over the placement of a piece, their hands dusty and expressive. One boy looks up and sees the artisan, offering a small smile before turning back to the game. The artisan nods in return, warmed by the simplicity of the moment, the continuity of it. He played senet when he was their age, on boards made from leftover shards of broken door lintels or smooth fragments of limestone from the edges of the quarry. The same game, the same sand, the same afternoon light. Different children, different hands. At his home, the courtyard is shaded, and a pot of water rests near the hearth. His wife has draped a length of cloth across two low posts, letting it catch the breeze as it dries. She is seated on a mat, weaving palm fronds into a basket. The movement of her hands is smooth and practiced. Over, under, fold, press. She does not look up immediately, but he knows she's aware of him. He sets down his tool bundle and stretches his arms. His shoulders crack softly. From inside the house, the soft murmur of a child's voice drifts outward. Their son, talking to himself as he draws with a stick on a clay tile, repeating fragments of story he's heard from neighbors or the scribe's son. And the god Ra, he sailed in his boat. Through the sky and under the ground, the artisan listens for a moment, smiling. He walks to the basin, splashes his face with water. It's cooler than expected, likely fetched earlier from the well while the shadows were still long. The water runs down his neck and into the collar of his tunic, bringing a moment of sharpness that fades quickly into relief. Dinner is simple tonight. A bowl of lentil stew with slices of onion and a piece of soft bread, torn by hand. The family gathers around the tray in the courtyard. No one speaks for a while. The eating is quiet, a rhythm of fingers, of bread dipping, of sips from a shared cup. The children eat slowly, sleepiness beginning to settle over them like the dark. Afterward, they sit for a while in the fading light. The artisan leans against the wall, eyes half closed. His wife hums softly as she folds the drying cloth, the notes low and slow, the kind that do not ask for attention. Their daughter leans against his knee, toying with a scrap of thread. The boy continues his story, quieter now, whispering to his fingers as if they were his audience. Then, one by one, the family begins to drift toward rest. The artisan remains outside for a while longer. The stars have begun to gather, pale and blinking. The moon is only a sliver tonight, a curved line etched onto the sky like one of his carved glyphs. He imagines it hovering above Osiris's throne, part of the sky ceiling yet to be painted. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow they will begin adding the brush strokes to the upper register. The ceiling is ready. The pigment has been prepared, indigo for the background, white for the stars. Each one must be placed with care. They are not simply decorative. They guide the soul. The artisan thinks of the idea that the tomb is not a place of endings but of direction. That each scene carved, each figure painted, each word written serves to orient the spirit in the land beyond. It is not unlike building a boat in a way. You make the hull, you shape the oars, and you hope that what you've created will carry someone safely through the unknown. He rises and enters the house. The children are already asleep. Their forms are soft in the low light, curled like cats, limbs relaxed. His wife has laid out a folded blanket for him. He lowers himself onto it, stretches, and lets his breath slow. Tonight, the sleep will be deep, and when the morning comes, the sky will be a little brighter, the stars above the tomb a little more complete. He does not remember closing his eyes, but he dreams of blue stone ceilings, of gods painted in gold, of a river flowing beneath the earth, carrying a boat lit by flame, and of his chisel, tapping gently, shaping that world, one groove at a time. The sky is pale again, touched with the softest gray-blue light of early morning. The village sleeps in folds, wrapped in quiet that deepens just before waking. But within the artisan's house, small sounds begin. A shift of fabric, a faint cough, the creak of a wooden beam settling in its place. These are the first signs that the day will rise once more. He opens his eyes slowly. The warmth of his blanket clings to him, reluctant to let go. He blinks up at the ceiling, where the plaster is marked with faint traces. A spider's thin web, the smudge of soot from last season's hearth smoke, a crack from a past tremor. Ordinary details, familiar reminders that this house, like its occupants, has weathered many mornings. He sits up, stretches his arms until his back hums with stiffness, and listens. His son is still asleep, curled in a knot with one arm beneath his head. His daughter mumbles softly, chasing some half-forgotten dream. His wife is already moving in the courtyard, grinding grain, her motions slow and even. The artisan steps outside. The air is cool and dry. The eastern sky is just beginning to glow. The smell of the hearth drifts across the village. Not of fire yet, but of the ashes from yesterday, warming again. He splashes water onto his face from a bowl near the door and shivers lightly as it runs down his neck. There is no hurry. He eats a small piece of bread, left from the night before, and chews slowly as he unwraps his tools and checks them in the slanting light. They are quiet in his hands, their weight unchanged. The chisel still bears a small chip near the edge, a reminder of a stubborn patch of stone days ago. He files it down gently, humming under his breath as he works. Today he will return to the tomb's ceiling, to the stars. The walk is uneventful, the same path, the same sounds. Birds calling near the scrub, the low murmur of two women gathering water at the well. A boy chasing a goat with exaggerated steps and whispered threats. He passes these sights with fondness but without distraction. His mind is already in the chamber, above the carved gods, beneath the unfinished sky. The tomb greets him like a breath held overnight. Inside it is cool, dim, hushed. A few lamps are already lit. The painter is there, mixing the indigo for the ceiling. He stirs the thick pigment slowly, checking its consistency with the tip of a reed brush. When the artisan enters, the painter offers a quiet nod. Nothing more is needed. The ceiling has been plastered smooth in preparation, a wide canvas waiting patiently. Tiny charcoal dots have already been mapped, places where each star will sit. The painter climbs a low scaffold, settles himself with care, and begins. Each star is applied with a single flick of white, a dot, a mark, a light in the darkness. The artisan watches from below, admiring the steadiness of the brush, the way the stars slowly multiply across the expanse. He doesn't need to speak. He knows the story. The sky must be perfect. The soul of the king will travel across it, carried in a boat by divine winds, guarded by protective gods. The stars are his guide, his companions. To misplace even one would be to risk confusion in the eternal night. The artisan turns to his own task. Below the ceiling, a small wall remains to be shaped, the boundary between the gods and the field of reeds. He kneels, positions his tools, and begins to carve the long stems of papyrus. One stroke at a time, the lines are thin, delicate, waving slightly as though stirred by wind. He works for hours. Above, the painter continues, his movements slow and exact. Below, the artisan's chisel sings its quiet rhythm. Occasionally, they pause together to drink, to stretch, to share a comment about the day's work. They speak softly, if at all. But in the stillness of the tomb, even a whisper carries weight. By midday, the stars are nearly complete. The ceiling glows in the lamplight, deep blue, speckled with white. It feels vast, even in the narrow chamber. The artisan leans back, eyes tracing the curved expanse. He lets himself imagine what it must be like to journey across such a sky, to float among those painted lights. He returns to the wall, adding lotus flowers now, their petals opening toward the rising sun. In the next panel, he will carve the king harvesting the field of reeds, his arms filled with stalks, his face calm and satisfied. A vision of peace. This is the afterlife the artisans build. Not golden thrones or endless feasts, but quiet, ordered gardens. Rivers that never dry, boats that never leak, fields where the sun always rises. Toward the end of the day, the overseer visits. He tilts his head back to inspect the ceiling, lips pursed. He mutters a word of approval to the painter and casts his eye across the artisan's wall. There is no complaint. The work is good. The men begin to pack their tools. The artisan lingers for a moment, hands on his knees, staring at the panel before him. He runs a thumb along one of the carved lotus petals. It is smooth, precise, true. He stands slowly, brushes the dust from his legs, and rolls his shoulders. Another section complete. Another step taken. The walk home is bathed in gold once again. The valley glows, its rocks softened by light. Birds return to their nests. The wind carries the scent of warm dust and dry grass. In the village, a woman sings to a baby. Her voice is low, lilting, almost like the chants sung in the tomb, but gentler, closer. A lullaby for sleep, a lullaby for staying here, in this world, just a little longer. The artisan reaches his home. His daughter greets him with a smile and a handful of crushed petals. His wife hands him a cool drink. His son speaks of a beetle he found in the courtyard, shiny and black, its legs folded like a tiny god. They sit in the soft dusk, the day easing into memory. And overhead, the stars begin to appear. The real ones now, not those painted in pigment and plaster. They blink slowly into view, one by one, as if answering the tune below. The artisan watches them for a while, his breath slow, his hands still. Tomorrow the work continues, but tonight the sky is full. The air cools as night settles more deeply over the village. The sky above is wide and gentle, layered in shades of blue and soft black, its stars blinking like quiet thoughts. On the rooftops, baskets have been pulled in, jars turned upside down, mats rolled and stowed. Fires in the hearths are mostly embers now, glowing faintly behind walls that cradle the sounds of families at rest. The artisan reclines in the courtyard, one hand behind his head, the other resting lightly on his chest. His eyes follow the curve of a constellation, one he's seen since he was a child, its pattern taught to him by his father as they lay in this same position many seasons ago. It has no official name in the village, but among the workers, they call it the Boat of Night. Its stars arc gently, like a reed vessel, drifting forever through the sky. He closes his eyes for a moment and listens to the sound of his daughters breathing nearby, deep and steady, to the occasional rattle of dry leaves as the wind moves through the fig tree, to the faint scrape of a neighbor adjusting a shutter, to the silence of the tomb beyond the cliffs, not empty, but filled with waiting. The next morning comes without urgency. He wakes before the sun, not because he must, but because he is used to it. His body, trained by years of early rising, stirs even before the birds. The sky is only beginning to lighten, the stars still visible but fading. He eats a piece of bread softened with a few drops of beer, then wraps his tools and steps outside. Today, he knows, will be different. Not harder, not faster, but different. Today, he is to begin the depiction of the king's journey, the passage through the underworld. A sacred task, a long sequence of scenes, each connected to the next, each part of the great voyage beyond death. The painter meets him on the path. They walk together as they often do, speaking only after a few minutes of shared steps. "Will you begin with the gate?" the painter asks quietly. The artisan nods. The first one, yes, the guardian lions, and then the watchers. The painter hums his understanding and says no more. Inside the tomb, the air is still and cool. The ceiling above them now complete. A sea of indigo and white, each star glowing softly in the lamplight. The chamber feels different now, as though the presence of the gods has deepened. The work is no longer preparation. It is transformation. The artisan kneels at the base of the wall, where the first scene will begin. The king entering the underworld, greeted by guardians, watched by deities with animal faces and unreadable eyes. He unwraps his chisel, selects the one with the finest tip, and traces the preliminary sketch with his finger. The scribe has left a reference nearby, a copy of the original Book of Gates, drawn with painstaking care onto linen scrolls. The guardian figures are stern and symmetrical, each with a staff, each with a gaze that points inward. The artisan begins to carve. The work is slow, deliberate. Each figure must be balanced with the next. The gates must be even. The angles of the staffs, the curves of the horns, the flare of the lion's mane, all of it must follow the old patterns, the sacred guidelines. These are not simply decorations. They are spells in form. The king must pass them safely, and for that, the image must be true. As he works, the rhythm returns. Tap, tap, brush. Tap, tap, brush. Behind him, the painter prepares the next pigments. For these scenes, deeper colors are used, rich blacks, ochres, and the rare blue for divine auras. The painter grinds the stones slowly, adding drops of oil to bind the powder, stirring until the mixture flows like thick ink. They work together without speaking. Occasionally, The artisan pauses, looks up, and gestures toward a detail. A foot that must be corrected, a line that needs lengthening. The painter nods, adjusts, waits. As the day unfolds, the scenes take shape. First, the guardians, then the watchers, then the crossing of the lake of fire, depicted not as flames, but as lines of red with small arcs of brightness, suggesting heat, danger, purification. The king is shown standing, arms outstretched, unafraid. In the next panel, he walks through fields of stars, guided by deities whose names have long been forgotten by most. Each step is carved, each face shaped with care. There is power in the story, but it is not dramatic. It is steady, grounded, slow. A journey of acceptance, not struggle. Preparation, not an escape. By mid-afternoon, the artisan steps back. He wipes the dust from his palms and drinks from his water skin. His muscles ache not with strain but with the weight of precision. Every movement matters. He turns to the painter. Tomorrow we continue with the boat. The painter nods. And the river. They smile slightly. It is a familiar moment, the setting of one task, the anticipation of the next. The tomb is a story told in chapters, each laid in stone. As they pack their tools, the light from outside grows softer. The lamps flicker slightly in the breeze that follows them out of the entrance. The walk back is quiet, each man lost in his thoughts. The sky above them holds only the faintest orange now, the day slipping gently behind the hills. At the village, the artisan's daughter greets him with her usual tug at his hand. "Come see what I made," she whispers, pulling him toward a smooth patch of ground near the courtyard. There, etched in the dust with a stick, is her own version of the underworld. Figures with oversized heads, gates made of lines, a crooked boat. He kneels, smiling, and touches one of the drawings. "Who is this?" he asks gently. "The king," she says proudly. "He's walking to the sky." He nods. "Yes, that's exactly where he's going." She beams, and the wind lifts her hair gently around her face. They go inside. Dinner is waiting: warm stew, soft bread, a dish of figs. The family eats in peace, the day fading around them like the edge of a dream. Later, as the stars return, the artisan lies back in the courtyard, looking upward. He sees the painted ceiling in his mind, the real sky above echoing it in reverse. And somewhere in between, in that space between stone and starlight, the king walks on. The stars are quiet tonight. They shimmer above the rooftops of Deir el Medina, soft and distant, as if careful not to disturb the dreams beginning to settle over the village. From his place in the courtyard, the artisan watches them for a while. The same sky he's known his whole life, and now the mirror of the one he's helping to shape beneath the hills. His wife appears in the doorway with a folded cloth. She lays it beside him without a word and sits cross-legged, her hands busy with a bundle of yarn. They say little, only exchange glances that say more than speech might. Her fingers work the yarn into neat twists, preparing thread that will reinforce the family's linen tunics before the next market week. The artisan leans his head back against the wall and closes his eyes. Images drift through his thoughts, slow and luminous. The jackal-headed guardians, the river of flame, the king in his boat. He can see every line he's carved, every brushstroke the painter has placed. Even now, at rest, the tomb breathes inside him. He doesn't know how long he stays like this, somewhere between waking and sleep, but eventually his wife taps his shoulder gently. "Come," she says. "You'll wake cold." He nods, stretches, and follows her inside. That night, he sleeps deeply, and in the morning, the sun returns. Shy at first, peeking over the hills, then bold, washing the village in warmth. The artisan rises before it reaches full strength. He eats, washes, wraps his tools, and steps into the day. On the path to the tomb, he meets no one. The painter will arrive later. Today, the artisan wishes to begin early. The tomb greets him with its usual hush. Inside, the air feels cooler than usual, the scent of pigment and old oil lingering. A single lamp left by the night watch flickers in a niche by the wall, casting a soft, golden ripple across the surface. He kneels before the next panel. Today is the boat, the sacred vessel in which the soul sails through the Duat, the underworld. Sometimes it is shown carried by gods, other times by servants, sometimes afloat in star-filled waters. Here, it will glide across a band of blue, guided by divine figures and watched by protective spirits. He begins with the hull, long and slender, shaped like the reed boats that still ply the Nile. But this one is not bound by the river. It moves through the sky, through dreams, through judgment.
Top, brush.
He lays the line of the boat in shallow grooves, then begins to shape the figure at its center. The king, standing tall, arms crossed, wrapped in the linen of eternal life. His face is calm, the crown upon his head shaped with care. Around him, the artisan adds the guardians, gods with falcon heads, lion heads, crocodile jaws, each carved with symmetry, none too large. The gods are not there to frighten. They are there to keep watch. By midday, the painter arrives, his satchel heavy with pigment jars. He joins the artisan wordlessly, lays out his brushes, and begins mixing the river, a band of deep blue speckled with tiny stars. The brushstrokes are slow, layered in waves, each line following the curve of the one before. They work for hours in near silence, the artisan carving, the painter brushing, occasionally the sound of a jar's lid clicking shut, the scrape of stone powder being mixed. The tomb fills with the soft music of work. Later in the afternoon, they pause. The artisan wipes his hands, rolls his shoulders, and sits back on his heels. The painter joins him, holding out a small clay cup filled with water flavored with crushed mint. It's weak, barely noticeable, but cool on the tongue. They drink in silence, their eyes on the wall. "It's good," the painter says eventually. The king's face, "It's kind." The artisan nods. "He should be." The painter tilts his head. "Do you think he will reach the field of reeds?" The artisan does not answer immediately. He traces a groove in the stone with his finger. "If the gods are as just as they are said to be," he says softly, "then yes." They say nothing more. Work resumes. The boat is filled in with color. Ochre for the hull, red for the steering oars, gold for the small shrine atop its deck. Each detail is layered, deliberate. As the light outside begins to dim, the overseer appears briefly, checks the progress, offers a rare nod of approval, and departs. The painter packs his tools. The artisan lingers. He gazes at the boat, at the small, carved figure of the king, and the line of guardians around him. He exhales slowly, then rises, gathers his tools, and exits into the evening. On the way home, he sees two children balancing on a low wall, pretending to be gods, their arms outstretched. One shouts, "I am Ra," and the other shouts back, "I am Horus." They laugh, leap off, and chase each other in spirals down the alley. He smiles, remembering when he was that small, when the gods were playmates, not responsibilities. At home, his daughter is braiding palm fronds into a circle. She says it's a crown for the moon. His wife sets a bowl of dates beside him, sun-warmed and sticky. They eat together quietly as the last light fades. That night, before sleep, he sketches a new line in his memory. The curve of a boat, a face shaped in kindness, a river of stars. And in the distance, beyond even his dreams, the tomb waits. A place of shadow and color, of silence and stories. The night air carries a gentle stillness, one that seems to settle into the very corners of the village. Deir el-Medina sleeps, its breath soft and even, its dreams curling through the narrow alleys like wisps of incense smoke. The stars above remain unwavering, unmoving, the true ceiling beneath which all things lie, including the tomb where the artisan will return again with the coming sun. He stirs once in the dark, shifting on the mat, his back pressed to the earthen floor that stays cool through the night. A fig leaf flutters just beyond the courtyard wall. Somewhere a bird shifts in its nest, its feathers rustling like dry paper. And then, with the lightest touch of blue in the eastern sky, the day begins again. There is no need for a call or a bell. The rhythm of the artisan's body knows the hour. He rises quietly, careful not to wake the children, and steps into the morning light as it begins to stretch across the rooftops. Breakfast is modest. A piece of yesterday's bread dipped in water, chewed slowly while he checks his tools once more. The chisel he used for the king's crown has grown dull at the tip. He sharpens it gently against a fine-grained stone, his hands moving with a quiet certainty born from repetition. His wife braids her hair near the hearth. She does not look up but speaks softly. "It will be hot today." He nods, already feeling the warmth in the wind as it runs its fingers along the edge of the house. On the way to the tomb, he meets the painter. The two fall into step as they have done many times before, the silence between them shaped by familiarity rather than absence. Today, they will begin the most delicate part of the scene, the passage through the gate of fire, and the moment where the king's heart is weighed. These are not tasks to be rushed. Inside the tomb, the air feels heavier than usual, the kind of cool that carries weight, as though each breath draws the past a little deeper into the lungs. The oil lamps flicker against the polished walls. The painted ceiling reflects their light like ripples on a dark pond. The artisan unwraps his tools. The painter lays out his brushes and pigment. They begin. First, the flames. They are not drawn as wild or violent, but as orderly arcs. Stylized tongues painted in soft reds and deep oranges, encircling the king as he passes, not burning, but purifying. This fire is not for destruction, but for transformation. Each flame is placed with intention, and the artisan carves beneath them the protective spells, short phrases in careful hieroglyphs, calling upon Ra and Mot, upon hidden names meant to shield the soul. Next, he begins the platform for the scale. 2 vertical lines, 1 horizontal beam. Simple geometry, but sacred. He works slowly, checking spacing against a wax string pulled taut. The lines must be balanced, perfectly level. The entire wall depends on this symmetry. He carves the heart next, a small, almond-shaped form nestled in one of the scales trays. Opposite it, the feather of Mot, lighter than breath, a symbol of truth so old and fragile, even the gods weigh it gently. The painter leans in, brush hovering just above the feather. He pauses, then lowers it, releasing a fine line of pale white. Around them, the tomb is silent, save for the sounds of their work. The soft scraping of the chisel, the swish of a brush tip, the occasional hiss of breath through teeth as pigment is mixed. Time slows. Eventually, the artisan shapes the figure of Thoth, the divine scribe, ibis-headed, holding his tablet and pen. His task is to record the outcome of the weighing. The artisan carves his stance with quiet reverence. The god must not appear tense or hesitant. He is certain, just eternal. By midday, they step back and look at the wall together. The scene has taken shape. The king stands calmly, his heart before him, the feather opposite. The gods look on, their hands raised in benediction or judgment. The balance is perfect. The lines are clean. The message is clear. They sit in the shadowed corner of the chamber, sharing a handful of dried fruit and a piece of bread. The painter pours water into a small dish and lets the artisan drink first. Neither speaks for a long while. Then the painter says, "I remember my first weighing scene. I was afraid to touch the feather." The artisan smiles. "I still am sometimes." They chuckle. Not loudly, just a shared breath of amusement. When they resume their work, it is to add the details, the inscriptions that run along the edges, the subtle lines that suggest motion in the king's robe, the delicate curve of Thoth's beak. Later, as the light outside begins to shift, the artisan carves the final mark for the day, the glyph for justified, placed near the king's name. It is a word filled with weight, but also peace. He brushes the stone clean, runs a fingertip along the groove, and exhales. The day's work is done. On the walk home, the light is golden. Dust rises in small swirls behind his sandals. The village appears slowly, rooftops emerging from the haze, the scent of baking bread and boiling herbs drifting toward him on the breeze. At his gate, His son waits with a small clay figure in his hand. "It's you," the boy says proudly. "See, you're holding a hammer." The artisan smiles and crouches, accepting the offering. The figure is rough, its arms uneven, but its face wears a determined expression. He places it on a ledge near the doorway. "Thank you," he says. His daughter pulls him toward the hearth. His wife hands him a dish of lentils. The day folds in gently, like a blanket drawn over tired limbs. And as the sun sinks behind the cliffs, the artisan looks to the sky and sees, in the deepening dusk, the stars that mirror those he's helped bring to life in the tomb below. They shimmer, constant and still. And within their quiet, the king continues his journey. The air cools as night settles more deeply over the village. The sky above is wide and gentle, layered in shades of blue and soft black, its stars blinking like quiet thoughts. On the rooftops, baskets have been pulled in, jars turned upside down, mats rolled and stowed. Fires in the hearths are mostly embers now, glowing faintly behind walls that cradle the sounds of families at rest. The artisan reclines in the courtyard, one hand behind his head, the other resting lightly on his chest. His eyes follow the curve of a constellation, one he's seen since he was a child, its pattern taught to him by his father as they lay in the same position many seasons ago. It has no official name in the village, but among the workers, they call it the Boat of Night. Its stars arc gently, like a reed vessel, drifting forever through the sky. He closes his eyes for a moment and listens to the sound of his daughters breathing nearby, deep and steady, to the occasional rattle of dry leaves as the wind moves through the fig tree, to the faint scrape of a neighbor adjusting a shutter, to the silence of the tomb beyond the cliffs, not empty, but filled with waiting. The next morning comes without urgency. He wakes before the sun, not because he must, but because he is used to it. His body, trained by years of early rising, stirs even before the birds. The sky is only beginning to lighten, the stars still visible but fading. He eats a piece of bread softened with a few drops of beer, then wraps his tools and steps outside. Today, he knows, will be different. Not harder, not faster, but different. Today, he is to begin the depiction of the king's journey, the passage through the underworld. A sacred task, a long sequence of scenes, each connected to the next, each part of the great voyage beyond death. The painter meets him on the path. They walk together as they often do, speaking only after a few minutes of shared steps. "Will you begin with the gate?" the painter asks quietly. The artisan nods. The first one, yes, the guardian lions, and then the watchers. The painter hums his understanding and says no more. Inside the tomb, the air is still and cool. The ceiling above them now complete. A sea of indigo and white, each star glowing softly in the lamplight. The chamber feels different now, as though the presence of the gods has deepened. The work is no longer preparation. It is transformation. The artisan kneels at the base of the wall, where the first scene will begin. The king entering the underworld, greeted by guardians, watched by deities with animal faces and unreadable eyes. He unwraps his chisel, selects the one with the finest tip, and traces the preliminary sketch with his finger. The scribe has left a reference nearby, a copy of the original Book of Gates, drawn with painstaking care onto linen scrolls. The guardian figures are stern and symmetrical, each with a staff, each with a gaze that points inward. The artisan begins to carve. The work is slow, deliberate. Each figure must be balanced with the next. The gates must be even. The angles of the staffs, the curves of the horns, the flare of the lion's mane, all of it must follow the old patterns, the sacred guidelines. These are not simply decorations. They are spells in form. The king must pass them safely, and for that, the image must be true. As he works, the rhythm returns. Tap, tap, brush. Tap, tap, brush. Behind him, the painter prepares the next pigments. For these scenes, deeper colors are used, rich blacks, ochres, and the rare blue for divine auras. The painter grinds the stones slowly, adding drops of oil to bind the powder, stirring until the mixture flows like thick ink. They work together without speaking. Occasionally, the artisan pauses, looks up, and gestures toward a detail. A foot that must be corrected, a line that needs lengthening. The painter nods, adjusts, waits. As the day unfolds, the scenes take shape. First, the guardians, then the watchers, then the crossing of the lake of fire, depicted not as flames, but as lines of red with small arcs of brightness, suggesting heat, danger, purification. The king is shown standing, arms outstretched, unafraid. In the next panel, he walks through fields of stars, guided by deities whose names have long been forgotten by most. Each step is carved, each face shaped with care. There is power in the story, but it is not dramatic. It is steady, grounded, slow. A journey of acceptance, not struggle. Preparation, not an escape. By mid-afternoon, the artisan steps back. He wipes the dust from his palms and drinks from his water skin. His muscles ache not with strain but with the weight of precision. Every movement matters. He turns to the painter. Tomorrow we continue with the boat. The painter nods. And the river. They smile slightly. It is a familiar moment, the setting of one task, the anticipation of the next. The tomb is a story told in chapters, each laid in stone. As they pack their tools, the light from outside grows softer. The lamps flicker slightly in the breeze that follows them out of the entrance. The walk back is quiet, each man lost in his thoughts. The sky above them holds only the faintest orange now, the day slipping gently behind the hills. At the village, the artisan's daughter greets him with her usual tug at his hand. "Come see what I made," she whispers, pulling him toward a smooth patch of ground near the courtyard. There, etched in the dust with a stick, is her own version of the underworld. Figures with oversized heads, gates made of lines, a crooked boat. He kneels, smiling, and touches one of the drawings. "Who is this?" he asks gently. "The king," she says proudly. "He's walking to the sky." He nods. "Yes, that's exactly where he's going." She beams, and the wind lifts her hair gently around her face. They go inside. Dinner is waiting: warm stew, soft bread, a dish of figs. The family eats in peace, the day fading around them like the edge of a dream. Later, as the stars return, the artisan lies back in the courtyard, looking upward. He sees the painted ceiling in his mind, the real sky above echoing it in reverse. And somewhere in between, in that space between stone and starlight, the king walks on. The stars are quiet tonight. They shimmer above the rooftops of Deir el Medina, soft and distant, as if careful not to disturb the dreams beginning to settle over the village. From his place in the courtyard, the artisan watches them for a while. The same sky he's known his whole life, and now the mirror of the one he's helping to shape beneath the hills. His wife appears in the doorway with a folded cloth. She lays it beside him without a word and sits cross-legged, her hands busy with a bundle of yarn. They say little, only exchange glances that say more than speech might. Her fingers work the yarn into neat twists, preparing thread that will reinforce the family's linen tunics before the next market week. The artisan leans his head back against the wall and closes his eyes. Images drift through his thoughts, slow and luminous. The jackal-headed guardians, the river of flame, the king in his boat. He can see every line he's carved, every brushstroke the painter has placed. Even now, at rest, the tomb breathes inside him. He doesn't know how long he stays like this, somewhere between waking and sleep, but eventually his wife taps his shoulder gently. "Come," she says. "You'll wake cold." He nods, stretches, and follows her inside. That night, he sleeps deeply, and in the morning, the sun returns. Shy at first, peeking over the hills, then bold, washing the village in warmth. The artisan rises before it reaches full strength. He eats, washes, wraps his tools, and steps into the day. On the path to the tomb, he meets no one. The painter will arrive later. Today, the artisan wishes to begin early. The tomb greets him with its usual hush. Inside, the air feels cooler than usual, the scent of pigment and old oil lingering. A single lamp left by the night watch flickers in a niche by the wall, casting a soft, golden ripple across the surface. He kneels before the next panel. Today is the boat, the sacred vessel in which the soul sails through the Duat, the underworld. Sometimes it is shown carried by gods, other times by servants, sometimes afloat in star-filled waters. Here, it will glide across a band of blue, guided by divine figures and watched by protective spirits. He begins with the hull, long and slender, shaped like the reed boats that still ply the Nile. But this one is not bound by the river. It moves through the sky, through dreams, through judgment.
Top, brush.
He lays the line of the boat in shallow grooves, then begins to shape the figure at its center. The king, standing tall, arms crossed, wrapped in the linen of eternal life. His face is calm, the crown upon his head shaped with care. Around him, the artisan adds the guardians, gods with falcon heads, lion heads, crocodile jaws, each carved with symmetry, none too large. The gods are not there to frighten. They are there to keep watch. By midday, the painter arrives, his satchel heavy with pigment jars. He joins the artisan wordlessly, lays out his brushes, and begins mixing the river, a band of deep blue speckled with tiny stars. The brushstrokes are slow, layered in waves, each line following the curve of the one before. They work for hours in near silence, the artisan carving, the painter brushing, occasionally the sound of a jar's lid clicking shut, the scrape of stone powder being mixed. The tomb fills with the soft music of work. Later in the afternoon, they pause. The artisan wipes his hands, rolls his shoulders, and sits back on his heels. The painter joins him, holding out a small clay cup filled with water flavored with crushed mint. It's weak, barely noticeable, but cool on the tongue. They drink in silence, their eyes on the wall. "It's good," the painter says eventually. The king's face, it's kind. The artisan nods. He should be. The painter tilts his head. "Do you think he will reach the field of reeds?" The artisan does not answer immediately. He traces a groove in the stone with his finger. "If the gods are as just as they are said to be," he says softly, "then yes." They say nothing more. Work resumes. The boat is filled in with color. Ochre for the hull, red for the steering oars, gold for the small shrine atop its deck. Each detail is layered, deliberate. As the light outside begins to dim, the overseer appears briefly, checks the progress, offers a rare nod of approval, and departs. The painter packs his tools. The artisan lingers. He gazes at the boat, at the small, carved figure of the king, and the line of guardians around him. He exhales slowly, then rises, gathers his tools, and exits into the evening. On the way home, he sees two children balancing on a low wall, pretending to be gods, their arms outstretched. One shouts, "I am Ra," and the other shouts back, "I am Horus." They laugh, leap off, and chase each other in spirals down the alley. He smiles, remembering when he was that small, when the gods were playmates, not responsibilities. At home, his daughter is braiding palm fronds into a circle. She says it's a crown for the moon. His wife sets a bowl of dates beside him, sun-warmed and sticky. They eat together quietly as the last light fades. That night, before sleep, he sketches a new line in his memory. The curve of a boat, a face shaped in kindness, a river of stars. And in the distance, beyond even his dreams, the tomb waits. A place of shadow and color, of silence and stories. The night air carries a gentle stillness, one that seems to settle into the very corners of the village. Deir el-Medina sleeps, its breath soft and even, its dreams curling through the narrow alleys like wisps of incense smoke. The stars above remain unwavering, unmoving, the true ceiling beneath which all things lie, including the tomb where the artisan will return again with the coming sun. He stirs once in the dark, shifting on the mat, his back pressed to the earthen floor that stays cool through the night. A fig leaf flutters just beyond the courtyard wall. Somewhere a bird shifts in its nest, its feathers rustling like dry paper. And then, With the lightest touch of blue in the eastern sky, the day begins again. There is no need for a call or a bell. The rhythm of the artisan's body knows the hour. He rises quietly, careful not to wake the children, and steps into the morning light as it begins to stretch across the rooftops. Breakfast is modest. A piece of yesterday's bread dipped in water, chewed slowly while he checks his tools once more. The chisel he used for the king's crown has grown dull at the tip. He sharpens it gently against a fine-grained stone, his hands moving with a quiet certainty born from repetition. His wife braids her hair near the hearth. She does not look up but speaks softly. "It will be hot today." He nods, already feeling the warmth in the wind as it runs its fingers along the edge of the house. On the way to the tomb, he meets the painter. The two fall into step as they have done many times before, the silence between them shaped by familiarity rather than absence. Today, they will begin the most delicate part of the scene, the passage through the gate of fire, and the moment where the king's heart is weighed. These are not tasks to be rushed. Inside the tomb, the air feels heavier than usual, the kind of cool that carries weight, as though each breath draws the past a little deeper into the lungs. The oil lamps flicker against the polished walls. The painted ceiling reflects their light like ripples on a dark pond. The artisan unwraps his tools. The painter lays out his brushes and pigment. They begin. First, the flames. They are not drawn as wild or violent, but as orderly arcs. Stylized tongues painted in soft reds and deep oranges, encircling the king as he passes, not burning, but purifying. This fire is not for destruction, but for transformation. Each flame is placed with intention, and the artisan carves beneath them the protective spells. Short phrases in careful hieroglyphs, calling upon Ra and Mot, upon hidden names meant to shield the soul. Next, he begins the platform for the scale. 2 vertical lines, 1 horizontal beam. Simple geometry, but sacred. He works slowly, checking spacing against a wax string pulled taut. The lines must be balanced, perfectly level. The entire wall depends on this symmetry. He carves the heart next, a small, almond-shaped form nestled in one of the scales trays. Opposite it, the feather of Mot, lighter than breath, a symbol of truth so old and fragile, even the gods weigh it gently. The painter leans in, brush hovering just above the feather. He pauses, then lowers it, releasing a fine line of pale white. Around them, the tomb is silent, save for the sounds of their work. The soft scraping of the chisel, the swish of a brush tip, the occasional hiss of breath through teeth as pigment is mixed. Time slows. Eventually, the artisan shapes the figure of Thoth, the divine scribe, ibis-headed, holding his tablet and pen. His task is to record the outcome of the weighing. The artisan carves his stance with quiet reverence. The god must not appear tense or hesitant. He is certain, just eternal. By midday, they step back and look at the wall together. The scene has taken shape. The king stands calmly, his heart before him, the feather opposite. The gods look on, their hands raised in benediction or judgment. The balance is perfect. The lines are clean. The message is clear. They sit in the shadowed corner of the chamber, sharing a handful of dried fruit and a piece of bread. The painter pours water into a small dish and lets the artisan drink first. Neither speaks for a long while. Then the painter says, "I remember my first weighing scene. I was afraid to touch the feather." The artisan smiles. "I still am, sometimes." They chuckle. Not loudly, just a shared breath of amusement. When they resume their work, it is to add the details, the inscriptions that run along the edges, the subtle lines that suggest motion in the king's robe, the delicate curve of Thoth's beak. Later, as the light outside begins to shift, the artisan carves the final mark for the day, the glyph for justified, placed near the king's name. It is a word filled with weight, but also peace. He brushes the stone clean, runs a fingertip along the groove, and exhales. The day's work is done. On the walk home, the light is golden. Dust rises in small swirls behind his sandals. The village appears slowly, rooftops emerging from the haze, the scent of baking bread and boiling herbs drifting toward him on the breeze. At his gate, his son waits with a small clay figure in his hand. "It's you," the boy says proudly. "See, you're holding a hammer." The artisan smiles and crouches, accepting the offering. The figure is rough, its arms uneven, but its face wears a determined expression. He places it on a ledge near the doorway. "Thank you," he says. His daughter pulls him toward the hearth. His wife hands him a dish of lentils. The day folds in gently, like a blanket drawn over tired limbs. And as the sun sinks behind the cliffs, the artisan looks to the sky and sees, in the deepening dusk, the stars that mirror those he's helped bring to life in the tomb below. They shimmer, constant and still, and within their quiet, the king continues his journey. The night deepens gently, draping itself across the village like a cool blanket. A pot cools beside the hearth. Somewhere, a shutter creaks softly as the wind shifts, and in the calm, the artisan sits alone beneath the fig tree, its leaves fluttering above him in the breeze, their silhouettes dancing faintly on the plaster wall behind. There is no ceremony tonight.
No feast, no announcement.
But there is a feeling, something quiet and full, like the breath after a long task is finally done. The kind of feeling that arrives only when something ends in its proper time. He listens to the rhythm of the village, a child's distant giggle, the low hum of a woman's lullaby, the scrape of a clay pot being moved across stone. All of it has returned to the ordinary. The tomb, now sealed, has slipped into memory, already fading like a footprint in dry dust. But for the artisan, the tomb is not gone. It lingers not just in his hands or in the soreness of his fingers, but in his breath, in his very posture. He has shaped something that will not be seen again, and that somehow feels enough. The next morning arrives without rush. He wakes to the sound of his daughter humming. She is balancing a bowl of water on her head, copying what she saw the women at the well do. The bowl wobbles dangerously with every step, but she is laughing. His son is crouched nearby, trying to carve a line into a dried fig branch with a reed. His hands are too small, the reed too soft, but he persists. The artisan watches them quietly, then rises. Today he will not go to the tomb. There is nowhere to go now. Today he will return to the workshop, a place he hasn't truly stepped into in many weeks. The other orders have waited. New pieces await measuring and shaping: jars, offering tables, amulets, a basin for the priest's basin. Smaller things, earthly things. His wife hands him a satchel with fresh bread and a folded cloth. She does not say, "Be careful" or "Hurry back." She simply touches his hand before letting go. The path to the workshop is familiar. Stone paths, chickens in the alley, the scent of yeast and clay and sun-dried cloth. It welcomes him back without fanfare. Inside, the stone blocks are arranged just as he left them. Chisels hang on the wall. A basket holds fragments, edges, shards, the remains of things once broken or unfinished. A fine layer of dust rests over it all, like time paused gently while he was away. He unrolls his tools and sets to work. There's a basin to smooth first, a shallow curve already roughed in, waiting for its lip to be evened, for the surface to find its softness. The chisel slips easily now. His hands know the weight again. They fall into the rhythm. Tap, tap, breathe. Tap, tap, brush. Not long after, his neighbor steps into the doorway. He is older, stooped at the shoulders, his tunic faded to the color of old linen. "You're back to stone, are you?" "I never left it," the artisan says with a small smile. The neighbor nods. There's a crack in the basin near the well. "When your hands are free." The artisan nods in return. The sun climbs. By midday, the first basin is complete. It's not grand, not sacred, just smooth and practical. But there is peace in it, in its weight, in its shape. It will hold water. It will serve. Later, a young apprentice stops by with a broken spindle. The artisan takes it, examines it. He says nothing, but the boy stays to watch, eyes wide, as the artisan selects a reed, trims it, begins to shave the edge. The boy watches as the new piece forms. Not hurried, not perfect, but true. Can I try? The boy asks. The artisan hands him a spare reed, gestures to the fragment. Start with the line, he says. Straight, not deep. Let the blade walk. The boy presses too hard, as they always do. The line slips. Again. The artisan says softer. The boy steadies himself, breathes, and tries again. That evening, he walks home with dust on his arms and the weight of the basin still in his shoulders. The sun sets low, the sky a soft band of pink and gold. At the gate, his son runs to meet him with a strip of papyrus in hand. Look, he says excited. I drew the king again. He has a bigger crown now. The artisan takes the paper and studies it. The lines are simple, a triangle for the crown, 2 dots for the eyes. But the stance is clear, the hands raised in reverence. He looks ready, the artisan says. His son beams. Dinner is lentils, bread, and roasted onions. They eat slowly together. As darkness returns, he steps outside once more. The sky is full now. The stars have returned to their old rhythm. Their steady shimmer stretches across the heavens, the same way it does on the ceiling of the sealed tomb. He tilts his head back and breathes. Nothing more is needed. The work is done. The world is still. Morning light arrives with no hurry. It pours softly through the high window, slipping in golden strands across the floor and climbing slowly up the clay walls. The artisan sits near the doorway, sharpening a chisel, the slow scrape of stone against stone echoing faintly in the stillness of early day. His wife tends to herbs in the courtyard. She pauses now and then to pluck leaves, crush stems between her fingers, smell their oils. There is mint and wild thyme and something she calls desert sage, though it's not quite the same as what the temple uses. Her fingers move carefully, gently. Hands that have woven linen, soothed fevers, cradled newborns, and stirred pots of barley. The children are nearby. His son is using a reed to chase a trail of ants along the wall, his face full of concentration. His daughter sings softly while sorting pebbles into piles, dark, smooth ones in one dish, rough pale ones in another. The artisan watches all this without speaking. He lets the sharpening continue in its own rhythm, steady and slow. Each pass over the whetstone is like the breath of the house itself. In, out, smooth, return. When the edge is clean and true, he sets the chisel aside and examines a small piece of sandstone. A scrap, really no larger than a loaf of bread. Not meant for anything in particular, but the surface calls to him, rough and untouched. He fetches a brush, dips it into a small pot of leftover ochre, and begins to sketch. No plan, no commission, just the motion. A swirl, a curl of line, a seated figure. A palm tree, then a water jar. A crocodile, his daughter's favorite, with a wide smile and stubby legs. The scene is nonsense, really, patchwork of moments, but it lives quietly in color. When his daughter notices, she joins him. Can I add something? She asks. He nods, hands her the brush. She paints a little fish in the corner, its tail far too long, its eye far too big. He says nothing, but she grins with pride. The sun rises further, and with it come the familiar sounds of the village. The distant thump of grain being ground, the creak of a pulley at the well, a baby's wail carried over a courtyard wall. Life resumes, but even in the activity there's a softness, a slowing, as if the ceiling of the tomb has settled over the place like fine dust, not to weigh it down, but to hush it slightly. Later that day, the artisan visits the granary. Not for gossip this time, though there is plenty. Instead, he inspects the new jars delivered from the kiln. They're large, with wide mouths and etched bands for labeling. He checks for cracks, runs his fingers along their edges. The foreman nearby watches silently, then says, "They're not for a tomb." "No," the artisan replies, "but they'll hold enough." On his way home, he passes the scribe's home. The doorway is open, and inside the low hum of recitation echoes faintly. Something from the instruction of Tahotep, maybe, or a letter from an official in Thebes. The artisan pauses, listens to a few lines, and then moves on. He stops at the well, draws water, watches it swirl in the bucket. The reflection of the sky shimmers in it, broken by ripples. He dips his hands in, lets the coolness run down his wrists. The walk home is slow, untroubled. When he arrives, his wife is kneeling by the cooking hearth. She glances up. There's stew. It's thick today. Good, he says. They eat quietly, with only the sound of chewing and the occasional slosh of broth in the clay bowls. After the meal, he returns to the workshop. The stone basin he shaped yesterday has dried. He runs a cloth over it, then stacks it with the others, a tidy row of usefulness. And then he picks up a new block of stone. Not for a tomb, not for a god, just for the village. A bench maybe for the courtyard, or a trough for rainwater. His hands know what to do. As the chisel meets the stone again, he slips into the rhythm. The one that lives in the bones, in the breath, in the memory of every stroke carved and painted deep beneath the hills. The tomb may be sealed, but the work continues. Not sacred now, perhaps, not eternal, but still necessary, still quiet, still true. The days move on gently. The tomb remains sealed, silent behind the hills, but life in the village begins to hum again, not with the urgency of great tasks, but with the comfort of daily things. Chickens wander through courtyards, their feet scratching soft furrows in the dust. A woman mends a tunic with thread dyed in onion skins. An elder leans against a sun-warmed wall, dozing with his hands clasped over his belly. The artisan finds himself settling back into old rhythms. Not lesser ones, just quieter. The basin has been delivered. The bench now rests beneath a fig tree near the well, its surface worn smooth already by children's feet and gossiping elbows. He begins work on an offering table commissioned for a neighbor. A simple thing, to hold fruit and incense in memory of a cousin passed quietly 2 seasons ago. He spends the mornings in his workshop now, where the light filters in at a gentle angle, illuminating motes of dust that dance in slow spirals. His hands have not forgotten their skills, though they move more deliberately now, not out of age or fatigue, but out of respect. Each mark has weight. Each stroke is a kind of offering. Occasionally, someone stops by, a young potter hoping to trade a vessel for a stone weight. A weaver, asking if he can carve her family's name into the new lintel she's preparing. He agrees, always with a nod.
No flerist, no gesetaschen.
Only the steady, patient yes of a man whose craft has become part of the village's breath. One afternoon, as he prepares to carve a small inscription, a dedication to Ammonius on a water jar, he feels a presence behind him. He turns to see the boy from weeks ago, the one who asked to carve the line. He's older now, not in age perhaps, but in stance. He holds a chisel in both hands, reverently, like a priest might hold a lamp. The artisan steps aside without a word. The boy begins again. The line is straighter this time, shallow, careful. He doesn't press too hard. He lets the blade walk. The artisan watches for a while, then returns to his own work, letting the chisel sing its low, steady rhythm. Evenings are cooler now. The days have begun to shorten, just slightly. The stars rise earlier, and the lamps flicker to life sooner across the village's rooftops. His family dines together each night. Nothing grand, lentils, dates, onion stew, a slice of goat cheese when the trader passes through. But the table is full of talk and warmth. His daughter has started composing little stories. She rolls them onto scraps of old papyrus and reads them aloud, using different voices for each character. The artisan listens with a quiet smile, sometimes nodding, sometimes offering a word or two. Her tales are mostly about crocodiles and stars and foolish donkeys, but in between, there are moments of strange wisdom. His son still draws. The figures are clearer now, the crowns more balanced, the gods more distinct. Once, he brought his father a small painted scene, a child kneeling before a tomb, offering a jar of water beneath a sky full of painted stars. The artisan placed it quietly on the wall near the hearth. The tomb itself is never mentioned in full, not directly, but it lives in their gestures, in their hands, in the way they sweep dust from the threshold with care. It lives in the way the artisan pauses when he sees certain colors: ochre, blue, the soft black of soot ink. It lives in the silence that settles over him, just briefly, when he watches the stars rise. One night, after the fire has died down and the children are asleep, his wife asks softly, "Do you miss it?" He doesn't answer immediately. Then, with a slow breath, "No, but it misses me." She nods, not needing more. There is peace in that, not closure exactly, but continuity. The next morning, the artisan is called to the well. A stone has shifted, one of the flat stepping stones near the edge, and an elder woman slipped while fetching water. No one is seriously hurt, but the stone must be fixed. He brings his tools. The stone is large and rough, its underside dark with moisture. He inspects it, listens to the stories of how it cracked, how it wobbled, how someone said it always would. He nods, crouches, begins the repair. A girl nearby watches. She asks, "Are you the one who painted the king's tomb?" He doesn't look up. "Many of us did." She thinks about that, then says, "But you made the crocodile, right?" He smiles just a little. "Maybe." She nods seriously. It looked happy. He adjusts the stone, taps it once, then again, until it sits just right. And in that moment, crouched by the well, the sun rising at his back, the village waking once more, everything feels as it should be. Not finished, not perfect, but held in place, balanced. The final days of the season drift in like ash on a soft breeze. There is no clear boundary between them and the days before, no great moment, no line drawn. Only the shifting quality of the light, the faint dryness in the morning air, and the feeling among the villagers that something is turning gently beneath the surface of time. The artisan rises before dawn now, not out of necessity, but habit. He enjoys the hush of early light, the silence before chickens cluck, before children cry, before feet begin to sweep the alleyways. He sits in the courtyard with a small cup of beer, the flatbread beside him still warm from the stone. The wall is cool beneath his back. He watches the stars disappear one by one, the sky bruising into blue. Later, he walks slowly to the shop of the potter, who has a cracked jar she hopes can be mended. He brings string and pitch. They sit side by side, cross-legged in the dirt, repairing not just the jar but the long friendship between their families, sealed now with laughter and a shared date fruit passed between them. At midday, the artisan helps a boy set a new threshold stone. The boy is nervous, he wants it level, proud, perfect. The artisan tells him gently, "Stones don't care for perfect, just balance." The boy nods, unsure, but lays the stone again, slower this time, and this time it sits true. In the shade of the fig tree, his daughter sings a new song she has learned from the weaver's niece. It's simple and repetitive, a story about a clever ibis and a stubborn goose, but she sings it with such seriousness, as though it were sacred. In the workshop, the air smells of stone dust and old oil. The walls are warm. A faint breeze slips in through the window and stirs the cloths hung above the door. The artisan takes out a new slab, not for commission, not even for trade. Just a smooth, quiet piece of limestone, clean and pale, waiting. He sharpens his reed pen, mixes ink from soot and water. No color this time, only black. And he writes, not a record, not a prayer, just lines, observations, memories, the names of tools, the weight of a chisel in his hand, the feeling of painting stars above a royal tomb, his daughter's crooked fish, the scent of his wife's stew when the sun begins to dip. The writing is loose, almost careless. Some lines smudge, a few repeat. He doesn't mind. The slab isn't for anyone else. It's not for eternity. It's just for now. By late afternoon, the wind picks up dust along the road to the valley. A small group passes through the village on their way to Thebes. Scribes, guards, young men with sharp sandals and important satchels. They ask directions. They drink water. They say little of meaning, but they glance once toward the hills. And then they leave. The artisan watches them go, then returns to the house. In the evening, the family gathers in the courtyard. The fire is low, the food simple, lentils, a bit of cheese, dried fish. The artisan's wife hums while stirring a pot. His son leans against his side, dozing with a reed in hand. His daughter paints on a shard of broken jar, a little crocodile with a crown this time, laughing as she does. The stars rise, again, as they always do, and the artisan thinks of the tomb, sealed, silent, still, not forgotten, just complete. He closes his eyes. The night deepens. The sky breathes, and in the soft glow of a flickering lamp, with the voices of his family around him, and the rhythm of old tools resting in their places, the artisan lets the quiet come. Not sleep yet, but peace. And now, with the stars high above Deir el Medina and the tomb sealed beneath its hill of silence, we drift to the end of our long walk through stone, pigment, and quiet purpose. You've wandered the dusty paths where sandals leave fleeting prints, sat in shaded courtyards where laughter and labor share the same space, and stood beneath painted ceilings where stars were fixed with steady hands for a king's eternity. The tomb is no longer open to sun or voice, yet it remains, deep and still, lined with the quiet legacy of those who shaped it. Their names may fade, as most do, but their rhythm, the gentle carving, the soft brush, the silent knowing of the work, it lingers, even now, in the hush between one breath and the next, in the warmth of stone at dusk, in the way a child draws stars on clay. So rest now. Let your thoughts soften like worn sandstone. Let the stillness of the valley settle around you, warm and vast. Let your breath follow the slow rhythm of chisels in ancient hands. The tomb waits quietly, and so perhaps do your dreams. Good night, and sleep well.